Good evening again. I'd like to call the community of the whole for the village of Cary for January 17th, 2023 to order with roll call, please.
Weinhammer?
Here.
Walrath?
Here.
Collier?
Here.
Cavelli? Here. McAlpine?
Here.
Thank you. Again, would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now moving to the public comment portion. The public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. Thank you. The people that I have signed in, they're all for the Hilltop Subdivision Sidewalk conversation. So I will call you up at that point, which is really kind of like right now. Moving forward to a discussion regarding the potential addition of sidewalks in the Hilltop subdivision.
Thank you, Mayor. So this evening, for the committee, we are discussing the proposed concept and gathering of feedback with regards to the possibility of sidewalk in the Hilltop subdivision. As you might recall, the Hilltop subdivision is located just east of downtown, and it's bounded by Route 14 to the north, the Union Pacific Railroad tracks to the south and west, and the ComEd transmission line tower right away to the east. Next slide, please. Previously, we had a request to investigate the possibility of sidewalks by a resident, and as part of that, we did some data collection in 2022, which included some speed and traffic volume counts at the intersection and approaching the intersection of 2nd Street and Ross Avenue, which is the center of the subdivision. If you could advance one, thank you. As part of that data collection, we found that the subdivision, as anticipated, with approximately 39 homes in this isolated pocket of residential just south of Route 14, it has one entrance in and out of the subdivision, and we measured an average in 2022 of approximately 260 to 270 vehicles per day. And that compares with the surrounding roadways. The major arterial to the north of Route 14 carries about 25,400 vehicles per day, just for comparison. And then the collector roadway of 1st Street, which intersects 14 just to the north and west, has just over 1,700 vehicles per day. Average speeds were in the range of 13 miles per hour that were measured. That is partially due to the fact that there's an intersection approaching at Ross, so some vehicles are slowing down for the turn. But the 85th percentile speed was measured at just over 22 miles per hour. So that indicates that 85% of all the vehicles measured were traveling at that speed, 22.6 mile per hour or less. And I see on the in the images on the slide there some of the characteristics of the subdivision of the existing conditions. There are approximately there's 2 locations where there's some isolated segments of existing sidewalk, one on the western part of Ross Avenue and another on the western half of Cherry Street. Other characteristics of the subdivision, there is a curb and gutter on both sides of the roadway, and there are utility poles and fire hydrants predominantly on one side of each of the streets. Next slide. As part of the outreach, we conducted a survey back in 2022, as well as an additional notice to the residents that we're having a discussion this evening. So from that survey, we included, they noted 2 potential options, and I'll note a third as we progress in this discussion this evening. The first option that we outlined that was a possibility for consideration was the inclusion of just completing the sidewalk network on 2nd Street between Ross Avenue and Route 14. And then with that option, with only incorporating the sidewalks in the main entry and exit of the subdivision, the possibility of then removing the existing dead-end segments of the sidewalk network. The next slide. The second option would be to incorporate sidewalk throughout the entire subdivision on one side of the roadway, and this was proposed primarily because of the configuration of the right-of-way of the subdivision. The road is not centered in some parts of the neighborhood within the right-of-way, so on one side of the road, the parkway is substantially narrower than the other, leaving less room for sidewalk along with the existing utility poles and hydrants that exist in certain spots. So with that option, we would, the concept could be to have sidewalk on one side of the road on all the streets except for 2nd Street, north of Ross, where the existing sidewalk, just like the previous option, would fill in that one empty spot and have sidewalk on both sides. The existing sidewalks would also be replaced as part of that concept, given the condition of some of the walks that are currently out there. Some have settled or shifted and are trapping some water. So with the construction of the new sidewalks, we would, as I mentioned, replace the existing. And then the third option to entertain is quite simply the no change option. The option could be to leave the network as is currently, and then with our next road resurfacing programs that would be anticipated in the future, we would just address the road asphalt pavement and the curb. So as part of our process approaching our capital improvement program and our budget that was referenced earlier, we are looking at these options to get feedback from the committee and from the neighborhood with regards to helping us plan for the design work on that road program. The slide before you kind of shows some of the benefits and challenges of including sidewalk in the subdivision. Some of these items were included in the analysis by staff, and some of these also were part of the comments that we received from the residents through our 2 surveys that went out. So benefits include an obvious improvement in the sense of comfort for pedestrians, having that dedicated facility for people to walk in the neighborhood, and as well as the ability to help pedestrians that are wishing to walk to the nearby Route 14 corridor and downtown and the metro station. And then obviously the most obvious benefit is eliminating the existing gaps that occur on the sidewalk network, since we do have some small segments that exist. Challenges, through our survey process, there is a differing level of support for both sides, both in favor of finishing the sidewalk network and against. In some locations, because I mentioned that right-of-way is kind of off-centered, some of the driveways that exist, if sidewalks were added, would reduce the capacity of parking on those driveways. The sidewalks would likely, in some circumstances, take a driveway that does currently fit 2 cars deep. It may only allow 1 car. Some landscaping also exists in the neighborhood, so some decorative landscaping that is in the parkway that would be in the alignment where the sidewalk may need to go, depending on the location of the different streets. In some cases, because of that narrow right-of-way, some of the sidewalk would have to actually be a carriage walk, because there's no room to provide that separation. So even though we would be providing a new pedestrian facility, that facility would be immediately adjacent to the edge of pavement and the traffic flow, which does lessen to some degree for some pedestrians that level of comfort once again. And then third, with sidewalks, like every other neighborhood in the community, snow removal, that would be another item that the adjacent property owners would be new to that property in terms of maintenance for clearing snow. And then we also see on the slide there are the approximate construction costs for those different options based on the amount of square feet of new sidewalk and removal. That first option with mainly just the new sidewalk on 2nd Street and some removal, it's about $12,000. That would be anticipated at the current estimated costs. Depending on what year the road is resurfaced and the sidewalk would be added at that point, obviously the pricing does change year to year. But at least in today's cost, that's what we anticipate it would be. And option 2, with that sidewalk on one side for the entire neighborhood, it does increase substantially with more sidewalk area at about $55,000. So with that, I believe some of the residents from the neighborhood are here that may wish to provide some additional comments in addition to what they provided to staff, and then also entertain any questions the committee might have.
Before we go to the residents, there's any questions from the board for staff right now? Okay. Pardon me?
I want to hear from the residents first.
Okay. Moving forward, what we typically do in a group situation like this, we want to make sure that everybody is heard. We typically allow 3 minutes for public comment during a session like this. I do want you to go on record for whether you support this or you don't. So please come up and state your name and address and state your case. If you agree with what was just said and you want to be part of the record, just come up and say, I agree with what was just said, and just state your name and address for the record. So everybody will have an opportunity to be heard, and we'll go through in an orderly fashion, okay? We're going to start, since I have a hard time reading handwriting here. The resident at 112 South 2nd Street. Did you want to come up here, please? Is this Alan? Okay. You just come up to the podium here and just state your name and address and let us know what you think.
My name is Alan Sherwood, 112 South 2nd Street. I'm all for safety of kids and stuff, but you just don't come in and change what's been there. I'm for sidewalks in a way, as long as they're safe, but to rearrange the neighborhood to suit, I'm not for. So I'm for no sidewalks officially.
Okay, thank you. Is it Judy Madelhatch at 109 Ross Avenue?
Judy Middlestead,
Okay.
109, and I am against having sidewalks put in.
Okay, no sidewalks. Rachel Huddleston?
Hi.
Hi.
So, I lost my son last year, and if we had had sidewalks, that most likely would not have happened. But what is up there right now, I do not agree with. I believe that the sidewalks should be closer to the street because the front yards are very small, and I get all my neighbors wanting privacy. I also believe that they should be they aren't on my side at all, and there are 3 of us that have children on just one street on that side. And it doesn't make sense that we don't have sidewalks for our children to walk, and it concerns me if one of my current neighbors moves that, somebody will move in that does not let the children walk on their grass as current, and then my children will still have to go into the street to walk to a friend's house or to walk around the block. So,
Courtney, can you go back to that one slide with the existing side, as it is right now, the existing sidewalks? Would you be in favor of adding just on the one half of the street, or
I'm against both that's currently up.
what would you recommend?
Well, I want carriage sidewalks
Okay.
instead of further in, and I would so I'm on Hill Street by the field, and there's no sidewalks there, and I mean, it's like I said, my children would have to go in the street anyways. They wouldn't be able to ride their bikes.
Can we go back one more, please, Courtney? Thank you.
Okay. So you're on Hill Street, you back up to the high tension wires?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
So that's my.
So your preference would be to have carriage walks throughout the neighborhood?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you. And we're so sorry for your loss. What a tragic situation that is for the
And
whole community.
I just want to say I hope all my neighbors understand also that I am living all these mothers' worst fear, and these mothers are out here fighting so that what happens to my family will not happen to their children. And I hope that my neighbors can be civil with each other and understand that these mothers' worst fears has happened to a family.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Ellen Branson?
Good evening, board members. My name is Ellen Branson. Of course, I have to
Sure.
use this, but I live at 15 Ross, and first off, thank you so much for organizing this tonight. Really appreciate it. I'm speaking in favor of sidewalks on behalf of my daughter, Maxine, who has a physical handicap due to a rare form of dwarfism. Though she will be turning 9, she is the size of an average 3-year-old. Now, I have requested multiple times for sidewalks to be installed in our community and for proper accommodations, even prior to this tragic accident that occurred last May. But why? Right now, Maxine, as well as other school children, have to traverse to the bus stop on the road, which is, we know, a serious risk. Specifically for Maxine, she has a little wheelie bag that she needs. So smooth walkways are necessary to allow her to roll her very heavy bag independently and travel to and from school safely. I also live in a dead end, so the bus picking her up in front of the house is not really an option. But not to mention, it also stigmatizes Maxine for having a disability that she has no control over. After all, she just wants to be like all of her friends. In addition, Maxine, as well as 35 to 40 other children residing in this neighborhood, are forced to walk, ride their bikes, skate in the road, which in the last 15 years with Amazon trucks, online delivery services, and new businesses that are popping up on 14 have increased traffic and danger in our roads. Residents, parents, children need to have the option to choose safety and mitigate risk of danger. The only option right now is the road. As for my daughter, drivers simply can't see her very well. In fact, she was almost hit by a car, and it was not because someone was driving negligently or erratically. They simply couldn't see her. I understand from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, option 2 makes the most sense and helps mitigate risk. Does it completely eliminate risk? No. But option 2 certainly reduces it, and I thank you for taking the time to put these plans together to promote safety. Either way, the added expense for putting in sidewalks is minor compared to the devastating emotional impact and potential injury or death in the future that could result in not having them. To take a course of action that shows utter indifference and conscious disregard by moving forward with option 1, which removes all the sidewalks, and option 3, which is not changing anything, is to go against everything that you pledged as a board member to do, which is, quote, maintain and enhance the health, the safety, and welfare of its residents. Board members, the village has the opportunity to act within its capacity to put safety measures in place and protect residents, especially the most vulnerable, children and people with disabilities. We know there is a risk, and from one parent to another, I beg you to do the right thing and move forward with option 2 to put in sidewalks. The time is now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nick Branson?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks to the village and the board for coordinating this meeting. My name is Nick Branson. I live at 15 Ross. You just heard from my wife, Ellen. And I fully support everything she just shared and the inclusion of sidewalks in our community. I recognize that ultimately the board will have a decision to make, and I just want to focus my comments on what I think will be most helpful in your decision-making process. I think it's really important that you're hearing from the neighborhood, and I do respect everyone's thoughts. I just want to offer some of my own here. And just reflect that you may hear tonight that it seems like the majority of the neighborhood is against sidewalks given the results of the survey that was previously sent out. And I just really want to encourage you to weigh that survey very carefully and consider the conversation here. While the survey was a good attempt to get a read from the community, I have a doctorate in research methods, and I just have to say, you heard from less than half of us. And not all of those folks were against sidewalks. So it's really not a good representation, and I hope you take the conversation tonight as a representation of what folks want. You may also hear that sidewalks will be a challenge to maintain, and there'll be a large obstruction in lawns and cost us financially. And I just want to encourage us to deal in facts that sidewalks are not a new invention. They're certainly not new to this village. And we have sidewalks throughout Cary that are reasonable sizes and are well maintained. We have one in front of our home, and we've seen that happen. I respect and understand the concerns of my neighbors, and I hope our neighbors respect our concerns as well. We're certainly open to an alternative option that hasn't been proposed yet that would address some of their concerns, but also recognize ours and meet those concerns. I'm asking the board and the village to at least meet 3 minimum criteria in a solution for us. Create an accessible pedestrian path through the entire neighborhood with sidewalks on at least one side of the street, on each street. Create a dedicated space off of the street for kids to wait for the bus. They don't have that now. Connect existing sidewalks to maximize what already exists. Option 1 does not meet these minimum asks, and I adamantly oppose it. Option 2 does. I would be open to another option, like I said, but we at least need to meet these minimum requirements. please remember when you make your decision that what we have asked for here tonight is simply a reasonable way to walk safely around our neighborhood with a basic public good, sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Skye?
Hi, I'm Sarah Skye. I live at 105 Cherry Street. I think it's really important to give our community the option for sidewalks. I have 5 children, and this summer was really hard because I don't think any of my kids got to play with any of their friends because we were afraid to have our kids walk to their friends' houses. So to be able to give myself and my kids the opportunity to be able to walk to their friend's house, and the way it's laid out right now, if that's the way it's going to be, that's the way it's going to be. But to have more sidewalks would be nice because they would still have to cross the street to get to their friends' houses who are on Hill Street. So I don't know if that's an option to be able to do a little bit more than what's here. But if this is the options that's going to be, then that's the option it's going to be. So I am for sidewalks. That's about it.
Yes, thank you. Remember, we're gathering information here. We're trying to make a decision that's going to be the best for the community, and our staff will look at all these suggestions that are being brought forward. So please bring your suggestions. Mike Pierce?
Hello, my name is Mike Pierce, 126 Ross Avenue. I like option number 3. My son's 28 years old. He grew up in the neighborhood, riding his bike in the street, playing hockey in the street, and did fine. This past summer was hard. I just think, option number 3, I think, is the best. There's one way in and one way out. People move out of the way when you're driving. I vote for no sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Stauffer?
Hi, I'm Scott Stauffer. I live at 148 Cherry Street. I grew up in this neighborhood. I rode bikes and walked the streets in the 70s. I question, let me rephrase this. There comes a time, at the time when the road was put in, the curbs and the land was robbed from the island dramatically. Anybody who was around long enough would know that. We fought hard against sidewalks for those very reasons that were said, because it's a dead end, because it's 39 homes. It's a one-way in, one-way out. I do believe, though, the time has come. My question is, why is there only these 2 options? Why isn't the east side of 2nd Street expanded out and not touch the 2nd Street at all, the south side of 2nd Street, north of Ross? Can it be carriage sidewalks? I looked it up briefly. The minimum allowable sidewalk in the state of Illinois is 4 feet. Can't see where your measurements showed what you did, so I don't know if they're 4, 5, 6, 7 feet. There's no place that's 200 feet that you need handicap passing. So it would be 4 feet carriage wherever you need to. So I don't believe these are the only options, and we got to make the decision now on this. It's go or no. I think you can make smarter choices. Why is there a street going down to the dead end, but not on that dead end? Take that money, put that into the sidewalks that you're kind of refabricating, put everything up onto the carriage on south side of Cherry Street. These shouldn't be the only options.
Well, we're here looking for some of your suggestions. Thank you. John Rohrbeck?
Hello, my name is John Marbach, and I live at 120 Cherry Street in the Hilltop subdivision. I have several questions and comments in regards to the proposed addition of sidewalks in our subdivision. I want to note, while you're making your decision, the survey that was responded to, that was referenced, was done before the tragic accident that occurred in our neighborhood. And I suggest that the answers to many of the respondents would change now. In the paperwork that was supplied through the mail and also noted in the agenda for today's meeting, there was a study done in the summer of 2022 in regards to sidewalks. I'm curious if you can share the date of that traffic study and the purpose of that study. I ask this because on August 10th of 2022, I called the village to inquire about a study being done on the roads in our subdivision. I was told by a gentleman in the Public Works Department that the study was in regards to a stop sign request that was made for our neighborhood. Another person in our neighborhood also called the village on that day asking about the study and was told that the study was in regards to the dispensary that was being proposed near our neighborhood. Now it appears that study was actually for sidewalks. So I want to make sure then we have a clear understanding moving forward of what the study was for, when it happened, and that we get accurate information for the entire neighborhood moving forward. Second, I want to know if the village has any data to support the setback from the street for the sidewalk that's being proposed throughout the neighborhood. I believe carriage sidewalks are a better option. When the street was repaved approximately 20 years ago with new water drainage and curbs, the question of sidewalks came up, as you've heard. Decision was to not put them in time because it infringed on property and also because there was a proposal to expand the street in the future. I know the village has already taken action to expand the street on 2nd Street in the front of the new all-4 canine location. The plan is to add 6 additional street parking spaces in that area and move that sidewalk closer to the all-4 canine building. So my question in that regard, is there any plan to widen the street on any of the 4 streets in our neighborhood moving forward for additional parking? That would make a carriage sidewalk a folly. I think you'd find the majority of our neighborhood, when presented an option for a carriage sidewalk, would be more agreeable. Next, I just want to make sure that we have quality workmanship on this project, because if you drive around our neighborhood right now, you still see cut marks from the road project that was done 20 years ago through people's driveways. And the infill that was put in for the grass next to the street, you can still see where the grass isn't growing the same as all the other grass because of the poor fill that was placed. Another example of poor planning that our neighborhood has had to deal with is when along Route 14 they added finials to the top of the stairs when they put in the new retaining wall at all those properties. The one closest to 2nd Street had to be redone because it blocked the view exiting the village or exiting the subdivision. So I want to make sure that we have good planning. I think we all agree that this project is to create safety, and I will make sure that we are enforcing the ordinance to shovel sidewalks. And I'm hoping the village will step that up throughout the village, because currently we can't walk to downtown Cary because the sidewalks on 14 are never shoveled. There's also still a hole in the sidewalk outside the former U.S. Bank building. I think the options as presented are bad because it doesn't include sidewalks everywhere. I think there should be carriage style sidewalks in front of every house. When I was growing up, I used to go out on my big wheel and later my bike, and I'd ride up and down the sidewalk on my side of the street. I never had to cross the street to go outside and play. As it's proposed now, that's not an option for the kids in our neighborhood, and we have a ton of kids in our neighborhood. So, I ask you to go back to the drawing board and come up with another option. Something that has sidewalks everywhere for everyone. Carriage style will help eliminate a lot of the complaints currently because it's closer to the street. You're not cutting through people's yards. People aren't going to be walking within 10 feet of their windows, and you're not eliminating parking spaces and driveways. Thank you.
Thank you. Daisy?
Daisy Golke, 16 Ross, and we are in favor of sidewalks for everything that everybody else said who was in favor of sidewalks. I think carriage walks sounds good. I don't want anybody to lose land that they think they should still have, but I think something needs to be done. I was pregnant 20 years ago when they put in the gutters, and everybody in the neighborhood didn't want sidewalks. There were, I think, no children in our neighborhood. And I thought sidewalks sound good, but we were new, and I am now teaching those kids to drive in that neighborhood is also horrifying. I have chased my son down the road, shouting at him to slow down because of how many children play in our neighborhood now, which I love to see, which I haven't seen for the last year, and I would love to see it again, and I think sidewalks would help. And wherever they make sense, I think carriage walks sound good. Something better if people feel upset, but I am in favor of sidewalks.
Thank you very much. That concludes the list that I have. Is there anybody else here that would like to address the village board or the committee of the whole? Please come up. Just state your name and address for the record.
My name's Audrey Garcia. I'm at 141 Cherry Street. And while I do agree that there was a tragic incident that happened in our neighborhood has also been there for over 65 years. And one incident has happened. I don't understand why people feel the need to change everything because something happened once. In addition to that, 20 years ago, you took 8 feet of my lawn in front. And so now you want to take even more that, to put in a sidewalk. We wouldn't be able to put 2 cars in our garage, in the driveway, as you mentioned. The other issue that I see since you've widened our street is we have some flooding issues in between my house and the house next door to us. When it rains a lot, the window wells around our basement fill up. That never happened until you put in the wider street. And I'm concerned now putting in sidewalks, you're just going to put in more and more cement, and there's going to be nowhere for that water to go other than into my window wells, into my basement, into my garage. So that is very disconcerting as well. The more land you take, there's no place for that water to go. And, as I said, you've already taken 8 feet, and that made a huge difference in our lawn and the way the water drains. And I just want to say that, I am obviously against sidewalks. When I look at what you have now with 2, and I listen to my neighbors speaking about their children's safety, they would still need to cross the street. The people on the opposite side of Cherry Street, as me, as Mr. Marbach, there's no sidewalk there. So, it makes if you're talking safety, what you have there makes absolutely 0 sense because unless you're putting like bridges over the streets to get from one side to the other, you're still going to have to cross streets. And getting to a sidewalk is not going to make any difference from crossing the street. And so that was just my concern. And again, as Mr. Rohrbach also brought up, was the lousy construction that was done of our street the first time around. And and I don't know if that has to do with the flooding issue that we've had, but it gets bad when it rains, and it's only been since you put in that widened our street, and I'm just concerned with more and more, and I see the plans that you have for Route 14, more and more just no grass, nothing for it to seep into. So That's where I'm concerned, and that has nothing to do with anything, except that I do want to say, I wish at some point Cary would stop being the den of iniquity. Every restaurant here has gambling, and now you're putting on a marijuana dispensary. I'm sure as soon as they legalize prostitution, there's going to be a house of prostitution in Cary. So maybe you guys should just stop issuing so many permits for that and maybe keep it a wholesome family city that it originally was. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else that would like to address the committee? Come on up. State your name and address, please.
Hi, thank you. Daniel Garcia, 141 Cherry Street. It's really not about, I don't have kids, so, you got it. The issue I have is that 20 years ago you took 8 feet of my driveway, and I can barely fit 2 cars there now. Where am I supposed to put my car if you put a sidewalk across my driveway? I need to park my car somewhere. And, I don't have kids, but I'd like to park my car when I come home from work. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another gentleman over here that would like to address the committee.
Hi, Eric Persky, 22 South 2nd Street in the neighborhood. I am the property on the northernmost side with the big red line. I have 4 children. I'm in the same boat as everyone else. I want all of our kids to be safe. The tragedy that happened is absolutely terrible. I would like to point out the tragedy happened right where you would force kids to cross the street in the bottom of Cherry Street and Hill Street. I'm not for or against sidewalks. What I'm coming to here for is the sidewalk you guys want to put directly through the middle of my property, which would do the same thing as cut my driveway in half, destroy some landscaping that I have done, and put, I think it comes out to be 11 feet between bedroom windows and sidewalk. We already have a sidewalk on the right-hand side or on the east side of 2nd Street going up. Our corner, the red corner there, is basically where all the kids come to go to school. That's where they gather for the bus. I don't mind that. It's no problem. If we want to put a concrete pad there, I'm okay with that. I really don't want you to cut my yard in half 18 feet in to match where the sidewalk ended with, I don't know the address, but the one in black above that. It's 18 feet. It would run basically cutting my yard in half, cutting my driveway in half. Same thing. I'd be parked over my driveway. I have big vehicles. I don't see a way I can do it. The one sidewalk I would support would be a carriage around the entire neighborhood, if it had to come to that. But I also think we need to look at what that's actually making other residents do. I can go out there and shovel my corner, but there's other properties that have a lot of property that are going to now be responsible for sidewalks through their entire thing, and I don't think you guys are going to help with that. It's going to be up to us. And I don't see some of our neighbors going out there and shoveling their sidewalks, which makes this pointless. In the summer, it's good. I just think we need to look at this, maybe a different option. I would say option 3, but if we can make up a different option for carriages across the entire neighborhood, I think I'd be for that. But as it lays right now, I know I have no power here, but with what is planned on my property, 22 South 2nd Street, it can't have, I'd be in violation day one. I'd be parked over the sidewalk. It'd be an issue right away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Jim Opsel at 155 Cherry Street. It doesn't even propose a sidewalk in front of my house, so it may seem unfair that I even speak of it, but I would not like to see those extreme wide sidewalks throughout our entire neighborhood. I understand the parents with young kids, their concerns, so I'm not sympathetic to that. But we've lived in that neighborhood with several others that are here tonight that have said no thank you to the sidewalks, that raised their kids in that neighborhood. And we've always been concerned about being careful in our neighborhood. And I know that today there's more traffic, like they said, because of Amazon and everything else. So certainly we have to look at that. But we've raised our kids in that neighborhood. A lot of people moved in because our neighborhood is as isolated as it is. And they weren't looking for sidewalks when they bought the house. And I agree with the comment that's been made a couple of times that no matter how many sidewalks you have, kids are still going to have to cross the street. And the sidewalk can't get you across the street to your neighbors where your friends are. So my personal opinion is I would prefer no sidewalks.
Okay. Thank you very much. I just have a question. Just going to come up. Wait, hold on one second. Let's make sure everybody's heard first before we go to round two here.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Missed the sign-up sheet. Apologies about that. My name is William Weddle. I live at 2 Ross Avenue, which is way down at the dead end there. My wife and I moved in there about 2 years ago, and speaking as two people who do not have children, are still very much in favor for sidewalks around the neighborhood. We both coming from way down at the dead end to come up to 14 and 2nd Street, see the kids all the time in the street, and we're happy to see them out and playing. We'd like to see them be able to ride bikes, big wheels, whatever it may be, on the sidewalk, out of harm's way. All of us in the neighborhood try to be as safe as we possibly can, but accidents do still happen. So I would be very much in favor of option 2, or if there was another option that was put forward to put sidewalks completely through the neighborhood, whether they be carriage sidewalks or a traditional sidewalk, all the way throughout the neighborhood, I'd be in favor of that as well. Thank you.
Think there's anybody else who would like to address the committee of the whole? We're not going to get into rebuttals here, right? We've got a lot of government. Come up and ask it, please.
So something that wasn't addressed is crossing the street. Are there going to be crosswalk lines in the street?
That's something that is yet to be determined.
I want to know because that's something that my kids would know to cross at a crosswalk.
Well, that's something that's easily rectified.
So when it comes to crossing the street, and so my concern was the crossing to the other side. If there's a crosswalk there, that's fine, but crossing a crosswalk, there's going to be no crosswalk line there. So that was kind of my concern. So when drivers see crosswalk lines, they're most likely to be aware that people could cross. So if that is something that could happen, that would be nice.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll close the open forum on this. Trustees, any comments about this right now?
The survey was in, I believe it was the first survey was in June, I believe, of 2022. And then obviously we sent notices again to all properties advising of this meeting. So this has also, well, it wasn't a online form. This has served as another form of a survey and outreach. The question, I think, with regards to the study itself, the traffic counts were conducted June 30th through July 5th or 6th, I believe. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but it was the first week of July. And then as was noted, we utilized that speed and traffic data to also look at the warrant and see if a warrant was met for the four-way stop at Ross and 2nd, which I should have mentioned. Based on that data, it did not meet the manual and uniform traffic control device criteria for all-way stop based on the volumes that are present. So out of the 39 homes we had, including the notice for this meeting this evening, excuse me, we had 14 responses, or 14 properties respond of the 39. And then I am noticing then with this evening, without any additional emails, basically new responses from residents I haven't heard from by email or telephone from the meeting tonight. 6 additional properties are noted. So that would bring the total to 20 of 39 properties have provided some form of feedback.
Okay. One last thing for me. Can you tell what's the difference between a carriage walk and the regular sidewalk?
Sure. A carriage walk is kind of the industry standard term for a sidewalk that is immediately adjacent to the edge of pavement or the curb. So there's no grass parkway between the sidewalk and the roadway.
Are they also 4 feet wide?
No, the minimum width for a sidewalk is typically 4 feet. However, with the current design standards, if you do have a carriage walk, the IDOT requirement, which would be one that we would follow for local roads, given that we tend to fund our road construction and road resurfacing with motor fuel tax dollars, is 7 feet wide for a carriage walk. So obviously, depending on the configuration that's ultimately decided upon with the road improvements, it could vary between 4 feet and 7 feet, depending on the location of that sidewalk relative to the curb. Most new construction typically puts a 5-foot wide sidewalk. 4 foot is an absolute minimum. You typically see that in some of the older existing neighborhoods. But the new standards, I believe, in our Unified Development Ordinance, if a new construction was to happen, would be 5 feet with the standard walk that's not a carriage walk.
Thank you.
The original survey was April.
April, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Any other comments from you?
A question for staff. If we have new construction in an area being developed, what are the sidewalk requirements?
It would depend on the type of development. Like I mentioned, the Unified Development Ordinance, that does have requirements for pedestrian facilities, and they are typically encouraged. However, some plan unit developments may have different criteria that are kind of decided upon on a case-by-case basis. Like, for example, if a conservation design was incorporated into a future development that would try to minimize the amount of impervious area, or cluster development, those types of developments, I'm not aware of any in this particular community, but in other communities I've worked in, those typically recommend having sidewalks just on one side to kind of balance the need for pedestrian access and utilization and impervious coverage.
There would be pedestrian facilities in any new development.
One way or another, either
Yeah.
one-sided, two-sided, carriage walk, full-size,
Yep.
it'd be some type of pedestrian walkway.
Absolutely.
It's a standard here. And did you have any other, did you have a comment?
Did you have anything else, Trustee Walworth? No. So my concern with most of my decisions is safety, public safety all the time. I hear both sides. I hear the public safety side 100%, and not from a safety perspective, but from parking your car in your driveway. I understand that, but my question is for parking of the cars, can you not put the sidewalk through the driveway and just put it up to the driveway, where they could still park their vehicles on their driveway? I don't even know if that's an option.
And yes, obviously this is a very kind of a substantial amount of public feedback that we're seeking before any design is done. So we haven't initiated a design for the subdivision. The intent here is to get the public feedback, get the committee feedback, so that we kind of have that before we put pen to paper, so to speak, with any road improvement out in the subdivision. So yes, a lot of these ideas that we put 2 options out there just to spark the discussion and to kind of show the 2 different ways, maybe more of the 2 different sides of the design process. And obviously there's potentially unlimited number of options that are out there, which from a practicality standpoint, it would be hard to show every single one. So that's why we get the feedback before we do the final design. And yes, a lot of the options could incorporate a carriage walk. There are pros and cons. Like I think a lot of the very timely and smart comments that have been made here are things that we would have to consider. Carriage walks have that benefit of less impact in the parkway, more distance from the homes. But as I think one of the residents mentioned, the drawbacks there are that we would have to make it a little bit wider because it's closer to the curb, and it's better than having people walk or play or ride bikes or toys on the street, but you're still right up against the curb. It doesn't guarantee that, and also that pedestrians and people will use it, but it's good that it's there to encourage it. But someone mentioned winter and snow. That's having it clear is key, and having the neighborhood and the property owners actively, keeping them clear is important to make them functional. But carriage walks have that other side effect of when we do our snow removal. Obviously, we can't push the snow to the middle of the road. When you plow snow, it does go to the outside, so it will tend to pile up right on the carriage walk. So it makes that effort of snow removal even that much more because you have the road snow on top of the sidewalk that the residents would have to clear. Where on a traditional sidewalk with that grass between the walk and the curb, most of the snow will pile up there, and it's not as deep on the sidewalk in those configurations. So there's pros and cons. Driveways and parking, we noted that potential side effect, and it was commented here. Even the carriage walks in some of these driveways will still have could have an adverse impact on the number of spaces, because some of these garages and driveways, they're set pretty close to the road, maybe closer than we would see in a new construction. So even that 6-7 foot addition of a sidewalk right against the back of the curb, that may make the difference between fitting 2 cars and 1 car. Some properties it won't make a difference, it won't change it, others it may. So that's just another, again, impact that may not be a universal change to everybody, but certain properties may feel more of that impact than others with any option.
Thank you, Eric.
Was there anything else, Trustee Weinhammer?
No, thank you.
Trustee McAlpine?
Sure. First of all, thank you to everyone that's come back and given us feedback. That's the best way for us to be able to come up with something with a plan. So I appreciate everyone from whatever standpoint you're coming from. From what I'm hearing, I guess I would like to know cost-wise what it would be if we did the carriageway, something around a carriage walk around the whole thing. 'Cause I'm hearing from people that are against it that they might be more on board with it if we did something of that type of structure. But I'd be curious what the estimated construction cost is for that as well, because I think we just need to have all that information to make well-informed decisions. And of course, as other people have reiterated here, I think all of our number one priority is safety. We don't want to we want to do everything we can to keep people as safe as possible, and is trying to see how can we accommodate that? Is there a way to do that that's going to be something that can basically work for everyone? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think what we're hearing is that maybe looking at some additional plans and then maybe bringing it back before we make a decision. Because at this point, just so that everyone knows, and I think that the mayor made this clear, we're not making a decision tonight. We're gathering information. Then, we'll have additional proposals come back to us. We've done that on many other topics where we gather information, talk again, gather it again, just so that we're going through this process and really involving everyone and getting as much input and information as possible so we can make the best decision as possible. That's kind of where I'm at with my thought process.
Thank you. Trustee Cavelli?
So the question I have is
your mic on?
It is now. Question I have is, like with the roadways, when we look at the roads and when we look at what we're going to fix for the year, we look at what's deteriorated, what needs it in a more timely manner. Have we done, or has there been an analysis done in Cary of what subdivisions don't have sidewalks that need sidewalks to prioritize workloads? And because I'm looking at the number of cars that are coming into that subdivision, are there other subdivisions that are in need as well? So if we're looking at this as this one subdivision, are there other subdivisions out there?
Well, I know
So
that we have
like to know.
a sidewalk gap program that we currently do every year. We look at places that have, 12 feet of grass where there should be a sidewalk, so we try to take that within our walking network. We look at these things all the time. But I think from what the history is and from just what we've heard from the community and what the survey has said until now is that the neighborhood didn't want sidewalks. They were given the opportunity to have sidewalks when we did the road, and the neighborhood overwhelmingly said they didn't want sidewalks. So we're at a different time. We're well aware of that, and we make decisions based on what's happening now. So we're looking to gather the information that is going to be the best for your community and for our community. I'm a big believer in sidewalks. I think it's good. It's safe passage. We're very good about putting paths through our community. We've got an incredible path network, and it ties into a lot of our sidewalks. So, but when you're listening to what the impact of a community is, it's a horrible situation that there was this tragedy. Just gives me, it's just horrible. But when you look at the big picture of these things, we have to do what's right, what your community wants. We're willing to make, exceptions, and we're willing to work with the community what you want. The benefit of having a meeting like this and having such a tremendous turnout is that we're getting great feedback. And our staff, this is what we want. I wish we had this type of feedback for anything that we do. It's good to have the information for what the residents, I don't live there all the time. None of our trustees live there. We're not in there all the time. It's such a secluded area. You guys do your thing, and you're like in a great quiet area over there. So we need to look at things now, and as Trustee Cavelli was saying, we need to look at where this fits in with what we're going to do. I don't think the board is adverse to looking at other options. Our staff, Director Morimoto, is gathering all this information, and we'll be able to come back with a different plan that based on what you're suggesting. So I think with Trustee Cavelli's suggestion is that we need to dive deeper into this and where your neighborhood is in relevant conversations that we've had about our sidewalk gap program that we do every year. Every year we're putting in new sidewalks somewhere. So why not your neighborhood if that's the direction that we want to go? You know, we're not making any commitments here. We're not making any decisions. As we've said over and over again, this is information gathering, and it's been great information. It really has been. Is there anybody else that has anything that they'd like to say?
And if I may, Mayor, I'll just answer a couple of the questions I heard from Trustee McAlpine. I think you had you asked what the cost might be if we were to look at that option. Obviously, I don't have the exact footage, but knowing that just the conceptual option too that we showed, adding Carriage Walk on both sides would be roughly doubling the amount of sidewalk. And then we'd have to factor in costs for some utility relocations that might be required and adjustments to landscaping that might be, even with the Carriage Walk, might be in the way. But really high level, about double the cost probably of what option 2 is for that option. And then Trustee Cavelli had mentioned where else do we have this situation. There are other neighborhoods as part of our capital improvement program that we're currently preparing for discussion in February. That's part of our annual road program analysis. We look at that. As the mayor mentioned, it's not so much a standalone program for sidewalk gaps, but every time we do road work or we are planning for future road work and road resurfacing, we look at the pedestrian facilities at that time to see if it makes sense to fill in gaps that might exist, which in addition to the inquiry we had for the subdivision, we are planning in the next 5 years some road resurfacing in your neighborhood. So that because of the roads that are 20 plus years old, they're going to be and oftentimes do need some attention. So that's why we're looking at the sidewalks here as well. You're probably familiar with the Brigadoon subdivision. That's one of the older subdivisions just to the southwest of downtown. Most of those streets have either no sidewalks or sidewalk just on one side. So that's a pretty large area. Some of the other areas in the middle of town also have streets with no sidewalks at all. The neighborhood by the river is another example. So they do exist, but like the mayor mentioned, we look at it in a very thoughtful manner in how we evaluate where those sidewalks are needed, and we try to make them as cost effective as possible. So doing those sidewalks and filling in gaps or replacing them, improving them when we're doing road work at the same time to maximize that mobilization cost savings is how we generally approach it.
Anything else? Well, thank you again for your participation. Obviously, this is not over. We'll come back. You'll be notified of a meeting coming up in the not too distant future. We won't be making any decisions till we gather all these facts, and we'll convene again if that works out for you guys. All right. Thank you for your time. Moving forward, discussion regarding a towing ordinance for fee review. Deputy Nadenoff, are you taking this? Oh, the chief's got it. Oh, you're trumped.
I'll wait a second here. So.
Okay.
He's full.
People are. And I didn't want to say anything to this, but we just had a successful grant program for GAP. We just did that like 3 years ago, didn't we? Over behind Sandsburg too. Yeah. So that's something. I mean, the tragedy that just happened, that might be something we look at. That might get us up the. Yeah. That's how we got that one. Okay. All right, Chief, go ahead.
Okay, getting back to why we were here to discuss the towing regulations is, number one, we're required to by our ordinance that we're supposed to, the police department's supposed to review this annually, and then every 2 years, the village board has a right to look at the rates and adjust the rates as they deem necessary. And just to remind everyone that the Illinois Commerce Commission sets relocation towing. So relocation towing is towing off private property. And they set those rates in Cook, DuPage, Kane, Will, and Winnebago counties. And right now, anything under 8,000 pounds, I'm sorry, 8,000 pounds, thinking truck enforcement, but 8,000 pounds is $216.50. So that's kind of where we were when we started this discussion, is that's the benchmark that we used as it relates to the discussion we had with our tow operators. Next slide. So this very complicated slide is what I'm trying to do here is give you our current rates, which are, the heading is current, thank you, and there's no shading, and then proposed is yellow, and it's yellow shaded, so you can see next to each other. The other issues here are that gross vehicle weight, when the ordinance was originally enacted, used 12,000 pounds, where 8,000 pounds tends to be the break point for first division motor vehicles in the Illinois Vehicle Code. So adjusting that 12,000 pounds down to 8,000 pounds brings us in line with what the Illinois Vehicle Code has as it relates to first versus second division vehicles. So what you're seeing here is, for example, the tow of a vehicle that would be involved in a traffic crash currently is $150, and the proposed rate is $200, understanding, of course, that that rate hasn't changed for over 10 years. And as indicated before, and I don't know if we have any tow operators here. I don't think we do. Okay. But they have indicated that their costs have gone up and that towing has become more complicated, especially as we get down to some of the other vehicles that we had no idea that they had some issues with, and that would be on the very bottom, is electric and hybrid vehicles. And that is that for storage of those vehicles, they have to have special facilities for them because there's a potential for fire. So they have areas that are set up with walls to contain a fire, but then that reduces the amount of space they have to store vehicles on their properties. So that would be an additional fee, that a category fee that we've included here, because that was something that we had no idea there was a differentiation for. In regards to these rates, is there any questions or comments you might have as it relates to these rates here that you need some background or justification? Because that's where Deputy Chief Nadenoff would come into play.
I think we beat this to death at the last committee
To some
meeting.
degree, and again, this should have been done on a more regular basis, and we'll make sure it gets done on a more regular basis, on a go-forward basis. But you know, it certainly wasn't done before I was appointed, and I know it hasn't been done since I've been appointed.
Well, I think reflecting back on what the operators were talking about, you know, the cost of business has grown ridiculously, especially in the last couple of years, but we haven't adjusted these prices for them in over 10 years. I think this is realistic, and I think that we need to, you know, be good partners with the service providers that help us in situations. I have no issues myself with the proposed cost increases.
Okay, I have another slide, and there's another category of costs here. And for example, the heavy-duty underreach, we learned that they don't, the tow operators don't tow vehicles that way anymore. So that would be omitted from the matrix that we would put together for the ordinance as well. And then, interestingly enough, we had a very spirited discussion about oil dry. and the discussion that we had related to, where can you get oil dry for $25, and the operators themselves had a discussion related to where can you get it for less than the amount that they were talking at that time period. Again, we're talking about vehicles, especially as it relates to winching, that the light duty is under 8,000 pounds, then 8 to 26,000 pounds is that second category of vehicle, and then 26,000 pounds and one and more are your commercial motor vehicles, and that's why you see increases in prices at those junctures here. The other thing that I wanted to include here is that the tow operators, and Deputy Chief Nadenuff can probably speak for this more than I can, but they had reviewed the rates that we have proposed, and the only thing that they had some comments on is on the medium and heavy duty tows, that instead of a 1 hour minimum, they were requesting a 2 hour minimum or a portal to portal. And because they need specialized equipment and people that are specially trained to tow those types of vehicles. And the definition of portal to portal could vary from us to them as it relates to, maybe we would think portal to portal is from the time that you pick up the vehicle to wherever you store it. I believe that they were looking at it from a standpoint of the time that they call the driver until the time that the driver returns back to their residence. Deputy Chief Nadenuff, anything else? Did I hit everything?
I just think it's great that I think it's long overdue that we do this, and I personally like the idea if we have something set in stone. Those people that the operators that want to work with us, great, but that way consumers are not getting a different price on a different day. We have some consistency out there. I know we're not necessarily making money on anything like this. It has nothing to do with us, but it's really setting up a good standard where I think people are not going to feel like they're being taken advantage of or don't know what it is, because we have it consistent with all of our different operators.
Okay, well, let me define this a little bit too. This is only when we call a tow. So we would call that a non-preference tow where we call them.
Correct.
If they get called independent of us, then they can charge whatever their normal rate is. So this is only when we call them for some type of service.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions for this? Everybody in agreement with this on the next consent?
Well, let me go one more slide. I have one more slide, and see,
you're
not off the hook yet, I guess. But the only issue is I assume, and I just want to clarify that with the village board, is that we want to maintain this ordinance versus independent agreements with the tow operators. So as a consensus, we still want to maintain that degree of oversight as it relates to these services. So I assume that we want to maintain that this ordinance versus agreements. There are some municipalities that go with agreements with each of the operators, and I think it looks like we want to keep our ordinance. And the alignment of our categories for the weights, do we have any issues with those? I don't know why we chose 12,000 pounds when the ordinance was originally enacted. I know that 8,000 pounds, since I've been a police officer, has been the break point for First Division motor vehicles versus Second Division motor vehicles. Okay, that's all I had, so now I have no more slides.
Okay. So with all this said, consent agenda, yes?
Yes.
Yes, great job. Okay, nothing else. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 7:27.